Hello everyone, and welcome to a new tutorial for Gearotic Thougts. This is a tutorial on how to use some of the new features such as undo and redo, renaming a gear and changing a master, as well as replacing a gear that's in the middle of a transmission. We'll look at each of them. First thing we want to do though is look in the upper left hand corner of your screen, and you should have a row of icons. They should be new, open, options, etc., etc. You want to at least have the new button, because I have had people question me, gee, it's really a pain to delete all these gears. All you really need to do is hit that new icon and all the gears disappear. Having the buttons and the icons up in the corner really does make it a lot easier to move things around. Now the system does have undo and redo buttons in it now, and it also has keyboard shortcuts for delete. In other words, let's say we select a gear and we hit delete. It will ask us if we're sure. If we are sure, that gear will disappear. Hitting undo on the screen, which is now lit up, will take us back to where we were. You can undo up to 20 steps, and it's a rotating 20 steps. You can also redo up to 20 steps and go forward. And as you can see, when I hit undo, we went back to our normal transmission. And if I hit redo again, we would go back to having that gear missing. And I could go back to undo and we'll be back to the normal position. Now, when you're moving things around in Gearotic, it's an extremely complex procedure internally, so you will find that it's not 100% friendly when you want to do things like replace a gear. And that's why it's necessary for you to understand linkages and to take some time with linkages when you're starting to change things around. As an example, let's switch our driver. Up on the project tree, you can see one of the gears will always have driver after it. If yours doesn't, it means that you have an older version. You should re-download and get the new development version. When you click on the driver, you can see which one is your master. So there's our gear, which is rotating our transmission. And I have had people ask me before, how could I change which one is rotating the transmission? Well, first of all, give it some thought when you want to do that, because if the machine is linked in such a way that that master gear is rotating everything forward, if you were then to change the last gear to be your master, you would find you're going to have to reverse your linkages all the way back. There is no algorithm I can write that can do that for you, because there is an unlimited number of ways that can be done. The system will try to help you, though, in determining what you need to do. But if you give some thought about what you want to make master, then it turns out not to be too difficult. Since our gear train is moving from our master through a lot of series forward, let's just move it one gear backwards as a master and use that as an example. Let's go to this gear, which is really slaved off the master, and let's make it the master. In order to do that, we simply right-click and select Set as Driver. And when we do that, you'll notice that all the other gears stop turning. But now the gear that we selected as master is turning, and it continues to turn. We want it to turn the rest of the transmission, so we have to take a look at its linkages. If we click on that gear and look at the links down below, we can see that the only thing it is now turning is its own shaft, shaft number 1. And that's to be expected. Most gears do turn the shaft that they're on if they're the driver. So we want to link it so that it turns this gear, which used to be our master. But funny thing about it is, Spur 1 is the master, and when we go to the old master, we see it used to drive Spur 1. So we have to be careful to remove that linkage. There are safeties in the program which would probably delete that for you if it found that there was a conflict, but you can't rely on them, so it's always best to understand linkages and look at them. So basically what we're doing is removing the linkage from the master, what used to be the master, to the gear that is now the master, and I'm going to say remove link. And now I just need to do the opposite. I need to go to our new master and create a link. And if I say add linkage, the system comes up and tells me that the only gear in that transmission which is not yet being driven is the gear named Spur. Spur used to be our master. So this makes great sense. If I say link to that, then you'll notice the system says, I want you to move things. While it would not have been necessary, strictly necessary in the example that we just did, it is necessary in a great many instances to move, simply to make the distances line up again. Because if you made a gear larger or smaller, everything has to twist itself in. And again, there, a computer can't do it for you easily because there are a million ways to do it. So you have to move it. As you can see, when I move the one gear, all the gears move with me, and I'm going to rationalize it by moving it back to about where it was. Hit go, and now our transmission has been rebuilt. The linkages are proper, and everything moves as before. The only difference being this is now our master. And that's what we were aiming for, so good job. Okay, another problem that people had often asked for was how to name their gears, because it does get confusing if you're looking at Spur and Spur 5 and Evolute 3 and so on. So you can now rename gears. If I click on a gear such as our master, right-click and select Rename Object, I can now name it Master, which is probably a good idea. It'll keep confusion down. So there we have a gear now named Master. That takes care of renaming gears. Let's add a tooth to this gear so that we screw everything up and you can get an idea of what it takes to fix your transmission if you do something like change a gear. I'm going to select the gear and the gear that I want to change, and I'm going to select Send to Design. This will send that gear to the design screen so that our wheel on the design screen is now the exact gear that we just selected on the project screen that we're going to change. And I'm going to up the number of teeth on this gear and take it up to 18 teeth from 16. Now I'm not yet going to create it. I'm going to go back to the project screen and I am going to delete that gear. It will ask me if it's okay, and I'll say yes, and it is gone. Now when you create a new gear or change a gear, you always want to place it back on its shaft. So if you delete a gear and it doesn't, and it asks you if you want to delete its shaft as well, you should say no, so it has a shaft to put a new gear on. The reason for this is if you put a gear and simply mesh it to another gear, it'll create a new shaft, and that will create more problems for you in trying to rationalize your database back again. So let's go back to the circular gear module and create that wheel that we created. Now it's 2 teeth too large, but we're going to put it back on its shaft and put it back in position. And when I do that, you can see we now have the transmission with that gear having 2 more teeth, but things do not fit properly, as we can see. So the first thing that we need to fix is whenever you place a gear on the shaft, the system will assume that that shaft is going to drive that gear. And sure enough, if we select that shaft, which is called shaft on this program, we can see one of the linkages is to this new gear that we created. The new gear we created, this one, is called Spur 3-1. And if we take a look at the shaft that it's sitting on, we can see there's a link to Spur 3-1. We want to get rid of that because we do not want the shaft driving this gear. We want the master to drive the gear. So we're going to remove that linkage. And it asks us if it's okay, and we say yes. And now we want to link the gear to drive the shaft instead. So we're going to take that gear and add a linkage. And the system will ask us, what do we want to link to? Because it sees more than one possibility. If you did things right, the shaft that you just told not to drive that gear is now listed in this because it is not being driven by anything. We're going to select that one so that our gear drives that shaft. It's important that you do it in this order because when we connect the gear to the master, we want it to pull that shaft with it. So let's do that next. We're going to go to the master and say create add linkage. And when we select add linkage, we find our new gear, Spur 3-1, is in the list. So we're going to say, okay, we want that. Now, when we do that, the gear is going to ask us to move it because, again, it wants to rationalize its position. And you can see there is no place I can put it where it's going to mesh with the other 2 gears. That's to be expected because we've added teeth. So let's take it to a spot, drop it. And what we have now is a master, which is driving our new gear, and that new gear is driving the bottom shaft. So you can see that the our new driver down here on the end has now been linked to the gear that we just put on, and it's driving its shaft properly, so everybody's happy, except that we're now hitting these 2 gears on the end. Now if you remember the original transmission, it didn't actually touch this gear here. It missed it, and it drove this gear here. And this is the danger of making gears larger. As you can see, nothing would fit. However, this gear that we added is not yet meshed to this upper gear. So let's do that next. We're going to take identify the target you want to mesh to, which is this little gear. We're going to call it used to be situ. We're going to go to our master, say add linkage, and there's our missing gear. We say link it, and we now move this gear, and this is why it's important for the gears to be able to move. As you can see, if I put it in its old position, our new gear, being larger, is going to hit the gear in the upper right hand side. So I want to rotate this gear that we're linking to until it's clear, and all gears are clear. So here we are with a transmission pretty much as we started with, only this gear has changed from 16 teeth to 18 teeth, and if we simulate, everything works fine. So it's all a matter of linkages. You have to understand how linkages work and how to relink things in order to make them work again. Using this facility combined with move on gear and move on shaft, you can pretty much clean up any changes that you make. So you can take a very complex transmission and change a single gear anywhere in it without a great deal of difficulty. Again, with undo, redo, rename, and relinkage, you should be able to make any changes you wish to any transmission that you're making. Hope you enjoyed this mini tutorial. I'm sure that we'll have several more. Thank you.